the Padres, who's your daddy, signed Manny Machado.
Padre. Yeah.
Get it?
Yeah.
Padre is Spanish for dad. So they're your daddy, according to them. What a lame name for a team. I know, it got me that who's your daddy joke, so
Yeah.
I mean, that's worth it.
10 years, $300 million. 300.
Does that seem like too much? My initial reaction was, is 10 years too much? Because the Albert Pujols contract ended up being a good one for the Angels. That was sarcasm.
I don't know.
And he's one of my favorite players, and I'm willing to admit that.
Here's the thing. It's too much if the next highest offer was 8 years, $240 million, right? Which was what was reported by that the White Sox had offered.
Yeah, and that type of deal would make much more sense for anybody, really, because he's, 26?
Yeah.
So 26 to 32 sounds like a great time period to lock him up. Anything beyond that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Did I do the math wrong on that?
You did, but it's okay. You're only off by
26 plus 8.
34.
I'm an English teacher.
This is riveting. No, yeah, so that is the prime window, though, right? Like mid-20s to early 30s.
Right.
Okay. And so this is going to get Machado into his mid to late 30s, and you're still going to be paying him $30 million, which, maybe doesn't seem as bad when luxury tax increases, but you're still having to actually come out of pocket $30 million.
And to see, it sounds... The first thing I thought of was Machado's betting on himself. He's saying, when I'm 30 what?
34.
34. See, you almost did it too.
Oh, no, sorry. 10 years is 36.
Oh, yeah. So when he's 36 years old, he's betting on himself and saying, I will still be able to get a decent contract to finish my season, or finish my career, rather. Or he's saying, at that point, I'm probably going to be done. So let's get as much as we can and get as much money as we can and call it good.
Yeah.
And you said there's a player option?
Yeah, there was at least a report that there will probably, at least when I last looked, the full details hadn't come out, but there will probably be a player option somewhere in the middle of the contract, maybe after 5 years. Okay. And if so, that probably makes sense for Manny. Because if he has a stellar 5 years, at that point he's 31. If he could get another 6-7 year contract at a higher overall value, maybe it makes sense. What I'm struggling with here is, we had heard Phillies, we'd heard White Sox, Yankees a little bit, Dodgers maybe, not as much recently.
But the Dodgers were at least in the conversation because he went to a World Series with them.
Yeah, at some point there was a report that they had made an offer. The details were never disclosed. And so Padres seem like a huge dark horse in all of this. And what is their motivation? Like, they're not close to being competitive.
If they brought Tony Gwynn back, he'd be their best player right now. Not like the past Tony Gwynn.
And he's dead.
Tony Gwynn?
Yeah. He died of cancer. I think. Check me on that. And
I'm going to go through 7 stages of grief.
You were saying the Padres have 9 of the top 100 prospects.
I did say that.
Their farm system is excellent. They're going to be a team that potentially could compete in 4, 5, 6 years. But by then, you're on the tail end of Machado's career and deal. And so what's the motivation for the Padres to sign Machado to this deal right now? What'd you find out?
He died June 16th, 2014.
Okay, yeah.
I didn't know he was dead.
Yeah. R.I.P. Tony Gwynn. So what's the motivation, David? One thing that comes to mind is sometimes when you're a small market team, when any major free agent wants to...
Sorry,
when any major...
He was one of my favorite players growing up because the bat was always on the ball.
Yeah.
Always. I think I was watching a clip of him just recently, actually, where he hit an inside the park home run, and right before he hit the inside the park...
had that kind of speed.
Yeah, right before... It doesn't look like it, right?
Yeah.
Like the all unathletic body team, right?
Yeah.
He's right up there with Baker and Paul Pierce. But he right as he was about to hit inside the park home run, they gave a stat, and this is like in July, that he had struck out 4 times in the season so far.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
Like once per month.
Basically. So if you were a pitcher in the majors and you face Tony Gwynn on the reg, you know you're going to strike him out once if you face him for an entire month.
Wow.
So he was a baller, man. I'm really sorry to hear that. I know we're mourning the death of someone who died 5 years ago.
Yeah.
But, man, they call him Mr. Padre.
Yeah.
He had a great fro when he was younger. There's so much to like about Tony Gwynn.
No, and David, you hear this? It often doesn't, often sounds cliche, but in his case, I think it is apropos. He played the game the right way. I don't know. At least for the National League, right? Move the runner over, contact. All right, so why would the Padres do this? One theory that I have is when you're a small market team, anytime a major free agent wants to sign with you, you have to do it.
Whatever it takes.
Because it may only happen once in a generation, and if it happens once, maybe you can convince a second free agent to sign with you. And if nothing else, Machado has been criticized for maybe having a poor attitude or questionable, what do you call it?
Having hair like Pidgeotto.
Questionable hair choices. But, if he can teach some of the young guys some things, can be a positive influence at least on their development. Maybe they actually have a winning record over the next few years and he's a part of that. There's some kind of culture of winning and that gets passed on to these awesome prospects that they have. Maybe that's part of it. I can't imagine they think this move puts them in contention for the NL West.
No.
And baseball's a crazy sport where they could have not done this move and won the World Series next year.
Yes.
Just because baseball's baseball.
Yeah.
But you can't objectively say, oh, this move now puts them ahead of the Rockies and the Dodgers in the NL West.
And it seems like the Padres are doing it the way all these other teams are doing it. You home grow your talent, you get good draft picks, you get good prospects, you grow them in your farm system, and then you have them on great contracts for 5-6 years, right?
Yeah.
That's what the Astros have done. The Red Sox do that, and they also have a ton of money to throw at free agents, and people want to go to Boston, so they have that double whammy. The Yankees haven't really been able to bring in free agents lately, and in this new era of baseball, they haven't been able to replicate the same kind of success as the Red Sox. And so it's not an easy thing to do, but the Padres seem to have been doing it the right way. And so throwing all of your money and locking up all this money on one player in a sport where one player gets up to bat 4 times a game.
Yeah. And they also gave a bunch of money to Hosmer like last offseason.
Right. And that helped. Right. So it kind of baffles me why a team like the Padres, who should be they should be thinking like the Oakland A's or the Houston Astros, kind of a smaller market team looking to build from within and maybe add a pitcher like they did with Verlander in Houston, right?
Yeah.
They should be looking to do that kind of stuff, not go and tie up all of their salary cap in a couple of guys.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing is San Diego is a one-sport town now. They lost the Chargers. They lost the Clippers way back when.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, the Clippers used to be a San Diego team.
I'm learning new things. It's a history lesson for me today.
And so, I don't know what the team's finances are like, but, maybe they felt like we have to swing for the fences now. We don't want to lose our last sports franchise. Right.
So you're saying they were getting pressure to be a good sports team in being the last sports team in their town?
Yeah, possibly. I mean, that could be another motivation.
Or maybe they were thinking, no one's going to watch basketball in San Diego, no one's going to watch football in San Diego. Everyone's coming to the ballpark now.
Yeah.
So let's go full on that.
No, and that's actually a good point that these regional TV deals have been super lucrative for baseball teams and basketball teams. And so there's nothing to compete with in San Diego, right? And so if I'm a San Diego resident and I'm saying, do I cancel the sports package? Because what do I got? The Padres now? The Chargers are gone, right? Who am I watching? Well, all of a sudden we get Manny Machado. Oh, I might keep it around for another year, see how the Padres do. I might want to watch Manny, right?
So you feel like that was strictly a business decision? Like maybe the owner of the Padres came and said, hey, I know this might not be the best baseball move, but this is going to be the best business move, which will hopefully lead to being able to make other good baseball moves.
Yeah, I think that's a potential consideration. And then the last thing I thought of is this is a major asset. It's a costly asset, all right?
So Manny Machado.
Manny is now an asset.
Okay.
He's under contract for 10 years, right? Maybe with an opt-out at $30 million a year, which is a lot, but think about in 5-10 years, that may not seem like a lot for an elite third baseman shortstop.
And MLB contracts have been on this crazy trend of going up and up and up for a while now. So that
especially
makes sense.
when like preseason we were thinking 40-50 million over 10 years.
Yeah.
Or for 10 per year for 10 years. 300 million now kind of seems like a bargain.
So that leads me to the next. Go ahead.
Well, and so since he's an asset, when these guys start coming up and their team is actually good, and Manny's still 28, 29 years old, and he's still on fire, you can trade him to a team with that team knowing, well, we've got at least a year and a half control over him. If he and then if he opts in, we've got 6 years, and we're close. We can win the World Series now. We just need that third baseman shortstop, right? And so we're willing to trade you some really good prospects for him. And you couple those prospects with the prospects they already have in their system. And so this could just be a play to get another awesome asset on your books that you can trade in a year or two for more prospects.
So you think the Padres are kind of doing what Danny Ainge has done with the Celtics?
Yeah.
Right? They're asset building, and then they can make a splash when the time's right.
Yeah, and so maybe they're hoping we're planning to pay this guy $90 million. We're not planning to pay him more than 3 years, right? And at that point, we're going to trade him for assets. I mean, that could be... The thing is, that could backfire, right?
Yeah.
If Manny suffers some horrible injury or his production just severely declines for whatever reason, and he opts into his contract, you've got him for 10 years at $30 million a year.
You'd have another Albert Pujols situation.
Yeah.
And I love Winnie the Pujols. He's one of my favorite players of all time. I used to imitate his batting stance as more of a joke because I sucked when I used his batting stance. But I used to imitate his batting stance. I loved him. But you cannot, with a serious face, tell me that contract was a good contract for the Angels. It's a great contract for Winnie the Pujols. But it's not a good contract for the team. So they worry about that, right? But interesting. I didn't think of it as an asset building perspective. So if, just really quickly, because there's been no news on the Harper front, for Bryce Harper, where he's going.
What are you doing, Harper?
But I imagine if Machado is getting $30 million a year for 10 years, I think Scott Boras, who we've talked about on the show, and we know how we feel about Scott Boras here on the show, how I feel at least, if Machado is getting $30 million a year for 10 years, what do you think Bryce Harper is going to ask for? Is he going to try to get that $50 million for 10 years like he thought it before? Maybe he increases it to 35 or 40, but I think he'll want to ask more than Manny Machado because he's playing a position where injuries are less frequent.
And I think he showed more potential upside offensively.
Absolutely.
And
definitely better power numbers.
Yeah, exactly.
And in this league, it's a strikeout home run league now. And so analytics have shown that sometimes a strikeout is better than getting a single. A strikeout is always better than hitting into a double play. Mm-hmm. So these players more and more are looking for the power numbers and the slugging percentage and the launch angle and getting the ball up in the air and as far as you can.
Yeah.
Because worst case scenario, it's one out.
Yeah, and you always want someone else to set the... Well, that's not true. You want someone else to set the market if they set it well, right?
Yeah.
And in this case, I think it was set well for Bryce Harper, right?
Yeah.
Manny Machado's $300 million contract bodes well for Harper. I can't see him getting anything less than that unless he's willing to do a shorter deal with a higher valuation per year. If I were guessing, if I'm the Phillies, I'd say... Here's your 10-year, $350 million contract. What do you think? Like, spring training's starting. Like, let's get this guy in, right? And start working with the team.
I'm sure he's hitting balls off a tee somewhere right now.
I'm sure his hulked out dad is throwing him BP in the backyard. That guy's scary.
That guy is Vegas strong is what he is. My goodness.
Yeah. Yeah, so I don't know. I think he's going to get a good deal. I mean, a massive deal. I don't know if it'll... I can't see it being $40-50 million, but...
Let's just say, even though I'm older and I have kids, I'd be okay if Bryce Harper adopted me today. What do you say?
Gross.